America, well, in this time of crisis, is now becoming a laughingstock. You have the Iranian president recently sitting down with NBC News and openly mocking the U.S. Watch this.
This coalition is somehow ludicrous and it is ridiculous, and there are people who have created these terrorist groups, and now inside this coalition they are countries who are financing these terrorist groups. When we say the red line, we mean the red line. It means we will not allow Baghdad to be occupied by the terrorists, or the religious sites such as Karbala or Najaf be occupied by the terrorists. For all the American forces who were in Iraq and they were not able to defeat the terrorists in Fallujah, how come they can now accomplish this with such a small number of ground forces?
All right, here with reaction, author of the brand new book, it's on Amazon.com today, Rise of ISIS, a Threat We Cannot Ignore, Jay Sekulow, and Fox News national security analyst KT McFarland. All right, before we get started, now we're being openly mocked by, by world leaders. Let me play all the military people that have spoken out in recent days saying basically the President, General Obama, knows nothing about what he's talking about. Watch this.
It still goes back to the point about the boots on the ground, why we're so reluctant. And we have this sort of mindset that if you put boots on the ground, meaning combat units, you're being drawn into a quagmire. Well, the decision to stay is a political decision.
It also sends a reassuring note to the coalition that Secretary Kerry's trying to pull together, that on the military side, we're all in. I'm not saying we'd have to commit them right now, but certainly don't pull it off the table.
The reality is they're not going to be able to be successful against ISIS strictly from the air, or strictly depending on the Iraqi forces or the Peshmerga or the Sunni tribes acting on their own. So there will be boots on the ground if there's to be any hope of success in the strategy.
My view at this point is that this coalition is the appropriate way forward. I believe that will prove true. But if it fails to be true, and if there are threats to the United States, then I, of course, would go back to the President and make a recommendation that may include the use of U.S. military ground forces.
Then you have the Army Chief of Staff, Ray Odierno. He told the New York Times yesterday, you got to have ground forces, he goes on, that are capable of going in and rooting them out. So General Obama apparently then got mad at what they said, went out yesterday, no boots on the ground. It sounds like he's lashing out at our military leaders.
Well, these are the most respected and most senior military leaders in the country and probably in the world. What the president's done is he said, here's the mission I want you to achieve. I want to degrade and defeat ISIS, but no boots on the ground. So what he's basically said to them is, it's mission, but it's mission impossible. They know somebody's boots have to be on the ground. Whose boots are going to be on the ground?
I don't think he's committed to this at all. I think this is about polling.
Yeah.
I think the presidency, 91% of America views this as a real clear and present danger. 71% want them to do something militarily. Right. He's doing this before the election. After the election, he'll wipe his hands clean.
Oh, listen, he's a reluctant commander-in-chief. I think there's no doubt about that. And you look at the way he's put this in a perspective. The idea that we'd be telegraphing before we even start anything, we are not going to put boots on the ground. Who starts a military campaign saying what you're not going to do? That's politics, number one. Number two, the president, this idea that somehow we're going to be able to take out by air power alone 35,000 troops. That's what ISIS is. 35,000. It's an army.
Yeah. Oh, and it's an army.
Yes.
That has the landmass the size of what? Jordan?
Yep.
Great Britain.
Money.
Much bigger.
Yeah. Okay. Between Syria and Iraq.
Right.
You know, you wrote this book. This is an interesting story. You were in Oxford this summer.
Yep.
You actually wrote The Rise of ISIS before anybody really knew who ISIS was.
Yeah, and you know, Sean, the interesting aspect
of this. Hold up your book.
Yeah, I will do that. So
and by the way, it's an e-book.
It is.
You can get it
Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple, iBooks.
Who is Explain to everybody who ISIS is.
Okay, so ISIS is not new. So this idea that we've kind of known about them, they were AQI, they were Al-Qaeda in Iraq, kicked out of Al-Qaeda because, according to Osama